The world watched with a mixture of disbelief and trepidation as President Trump, in a move reminiscent of his first term, unleashed a barrage of tariffs on Thursday. This time, the targets were a familiar trio: China, Mexico, and Canada. Trump, in his characteristically bold style, declared it Liberation Day, a day for American workers to reclaim their rightful place in the global economy. However, the immediate aftermath suggested anything but liberation, as financial markets reeled from the shockwaves of the president's actions. The economic consequences, both domestically and internationally, remain uncertain. But one thing is clear: the global trade landscape has once again been thrust into a state of turmoil. The tariffs, according to the administration, are meant to protect American jobs and industries from what the president has long deemed unfair trade practices. China, in particular, has been in the crosshairs for its alleged currency manipulation and intellectual property theft. Mexico and Canada, while geographically closer, have also been accused of taking advantage of the United States through trade deals that Trump views as disadvantageous to American workers. The president's decision, however, has been met with widespread criticism from economists and business leaders who warn of a potential trade war and its associated economic fallout. The tariffs themselves are wide-ranging, covering a vast array of goods from steel and aluminum to electronics and agricultural products. The administration has argued that these tariffs are necessary to bring trading partners to the negotiating table and force them to make concessions. However, critics argue that the tariffs are more likely to provoke retaliation than cooperation, leading to a downward spiral in global trade. As the world waits to see how the affected countries will respond, the uncertainty surrounding the tariffs has injected a significant degree of volatility into the global economy. The president's decision to impose tariffs is a gamble, one that he is betting will pay off politically, even if it comes at an economic cost. His base of support, largely drawn to his message of economic nationalism, is likely to cheer the move as a sign that he is standing up for American workers. However, the broader economic implications of the tariffs are likely to be far more complex and could potentially alienate moderate voters who are already feeling the pinch of rising prices and economic uncertainty. Only time will tell whether the president's gamble will pay off or whether it will backfire, further eroding America's standing in the world and jeopardizing the very economic prosperity he has promised to deliver. Furthermore, the Dow Jones plummeted over 1,000 points, the Nasdaq experienced its sharpest decline in history, and the S&P 500, a benchmark of American corporate performance, saw a staggering $2.5 trillion vanish from its value. This was not the scene from a financial thriller, it was the stark reality of Wall Street on Thursday, as investors reacted to President Trump's surprise tariff announcement. The markets, known for their sensitivity to uncertainty, delivered a swift and brutal verdict on the president's actions, signaling deep anxieties about a potential trade war and its ramifications for the global economy. The scale of the market reaction was unprecedented, dwarfing even the most pessimistic forecasts. Analysts and economists, caught off guard by the president's sudden move, scrambled to make sense of the unfolding chaos. Some pointed to the tariffs' potential to disrupt global supply chains and increase costs for businesses, ultimately leading to higher prices for consumers. Others expressed concerns about the impact on business confidence and investment, arguing that the tariffs would create an environment of uncertainty, making businesses hesitant to invest and expand. The market's reaction was not merely a reflection of the tariffs themselves, but also a vote of no confidence in the Trump administration's handling of the situation. The lack of clarity surrounding the tariffs, coupled with the administration's conflicting messages, only served to amplify the sense of uncertainty and fear among investors. The president's insistence that the tariffs were a negotiating tactic, while simultaneously demanding immediate concessions from trading partners, struck many as contradictory and confusing. This lack of a coherent strategy, coupled with the administration's history of unpredictable policy shifts, further eroded investor confidence, leading to a mass exodus from the markets. The events of Black Thursday served as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of the global economy, and the potential for political decisions to have far-reaching and unintended consequences. While the president may have intended the tariffs as a show of strength, the market's reactions suggested that they were widely perceived as a sign of instability and recklessness. The fallout from Black Thursday is likely to be felt for weeks, if not months, to come, as businesses and investors alike adjust to the new reality of a world on the brink of a trade war. The question now is whether the president will heed the warning signs from the markets, or continue down a path that many fear will lead to economic ruin. Confusion reigned supreme in the hours and days following President Trump's tariff announcement. The president himself offered a dizzying array of justifications and pronouncements, leaving economists, businesses, and even members of his own administration struggling to decipher his true intentions. On Air Force One, he characterized the tariffs as a negotiating tool, a means to an end rather than an end in themselves. Yet this seemingly conciliatory tone was contradicted by his trade advisor Peter Navarro, who declared on Fox News that the president would not back down and that the tariffs were here to stay. Adding to the cacophony was Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who echoed Navarro's sentiments on CNN, asserting that the tariffs were not open for negotiation. This discordant chorus of voices, each proclaiming a different interpretation of the president's strategy, sowed confusion both domestically and internationally. Foreign leaders, accustomed to deciphering the nuances of American diplomacy, were left bewildered by the mixed messages emanating from Washington. The lack of a clear and consistent message from the administration fueled speculation and uncertainty, further undermining confidence in the president's ability to manage the situation effectively. Adding to the confusion was the administration's insistence that the tariffs would not result in price increases for American consumers. This claim, however, was met with skepticism by economists who pointed to the basic principles of supply and demand. Tariffs, by their very nature, increase the cost of imported goods, making them more expensive for businesses and ultimately consumers. The administration's attempt to defy this fundamental economic reality only served to further erode their credibility and sow distrust among the American public. The conflicting messages emanating from the White House were not merely a matter of poor communication, they reflected a deeper dysfunction within the administration itself. The president's penchant for off-the-cuff remarks and his tendency to contradict his own advisors created an environment of chaos and uncertainty. This lack of discipline and coherence in policymaking had become a hallmark of the Trump administration, leaving both allies and adversaries alike questioning America's reliability and predictability on the world stage. As the initial shockwaves from the tariff announcement reverberated through the global economy, economists warned of a more insidious threat lurking on the horizon: inflation. The tariffs, they argued, were akin to a hidden tax on American consumers, one that would inevitably lead to higher prices for everyday goods and services. The tariffs, by increasing the cost of imported raw materials and finished products, would force businesses to raise prices to protect their profit margins. These price hikes, in turn, would ripple through the economy, eroding consumer purchasing power and potentially stifling economic growth. The specter of inflation was particularly worrisome given the fragile state of the global economy. While the United States had enjoyed a period of sustained economic growth in recent years, other major economies, such as China and the Eurozone, had shown signs of slowing down. Rising inflation, coupled with slowing global growth, threatened to create a perfect storm that could tip the world into recession. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, in its latest economic outlook, warned that the tariffs could shave off as much as 0.5% from global GDP growth, highlighting the potential for significant economic damage. The administration's insistence that the tariffs would not lead to inflation rang hollow in the face of these warnings from economists and international organizations. The president's claims that other countries would lower their prices to compensate for the tariffs were dismissed as wishful thinking, unsupported by any economic evidence. In fact, several countries, including China and the European Union, had already announced retaliatory tariffs, suggesting that a trade war, with all its attendant inflationary pressures, was a very real possibility. The threat of inflation posed a significant political risk for President Trump, particularly as he geared up for his re-election campaign. Rising prices, especially for essential goods and services, could erode the economic gains that the president had frequently touted as evidence of his successful economic policies. The administration's attempts to downplay the risks of inflation and their insistence that the tariffs would ultimately benefit American consumers rang hollow in the face of mounting evidence to the contrary. The specter of inflation, if it were to materialize, threatened to undermine the president's economic narrative and cast a long shadow over his re-election prospects. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to The Silent Observer to stay up to date with the latest news.